I was handing my granddaughter a birthday card when my daughter-in-law snatched it away and said, "We don't take gifts from people who manipulate with money." My son said, "It's just a boundary." I quietly left. But inside that card was a trust notice already filed, and when they finally read it, their faces turned ghost white because I'm Eliza Hartwell, and I need to tell you what happened at my granddaughter's birthday party, because I've been sitting with it for weeks now, and if I don't put it into words, I think it's going to eat me alive from the inside out. I am 67 years old, a retired estate attorney from Hartford, Connecticut, and I have spent the better part of my adult life being told that I love too carefully, too quietly, too strategically, as though caring about someone's future rather than their feelings in the moment makes you a villain. My son Daniel will tell you I'm cold. His wife Renee will tell you I'm controlling. And maybe they're not entirely wrong about the cold part. I learned a long time ago that showing too much emotion just gives people something to use against you, so I stopped showing it. I tucked it away behind precision and planning, behind legal documents and financial instruments, behind careful gestures that I hoped would speak louder than any words I could never quite find. That is my flaw, my real one. Not cruelty, not manipulation, just this terrible inability to be vulnerable with the people who matter most to me, and the stubbornness to double down on my own methods when someone challenges them, even when doubling down costs me everything. I want to be honest about that, because this story isn't just about what they did to me, it's also about what I did to myself. It started with a birthday card. My granddaughter Lily was turning 8, and I had driven 45 minutes to Daniel and Renee's house in Glastonbury with a small wrapped gift and a pastel yellow envelope in my hand. Lily's favorite color has been yellow since she was 3 years old. I remembered that. I always remembered details like that, even when no one believed I was paying attention. The party was already in full swing when I arrived, balloons tied to the mailbox, a dozen children shrieking in the backyard, the smell of frosted cake drifting through the screen door. I had timed my arrival carefully, wanting to greet Lily before the cake cutting so she'd see me first thing and know I came. That was important to me, being seen, being known as someone who showed up. I found Lily near the back porch, her dark hair in lopsided pigtails, chocolate smudged on her chin, absolutely radiant in the way only 8-year-olds can be. She saw me and her whole face lit up, and for a moment, just a moment, the tightness I always carry in my chest loosened. "Grandma Eliza," she shouted, running toward me. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, crouching slightly to meet her. "I have something for you." I held out the pastel envelope. "Wait, don't open that yet," I added, because the document inside wasn't something for small hands to scatter across a lawn. Let me explain what. But Renee was already there. I didn't even hear her approach. One moment I was holding the envelope toward Lily, and the next it was gone, yanked clean out of my hand with a speed that startled me into silence. "We don't take gifts from people who manipulate with money," Renee said. Her voice was flat and final, like a door slamming. The yard felt suddenly quieter, though the children hadn't stopped running. It was one of those moments where the world keeps moving, but you go completely still inside. I stared at her. "It's just a birthday card." She held it against her chest like a shield. "We know what your birthday cards look like, Eliza." Daniel had appeared from somewhere behind her. He was looking at the grass. That was the worst part, my son, my own child, staring at the grass as though the blades of it required his full concentration. "It's just a boundary, Mom," he said. I have replayed those 4 words more times than I can count. Just a boundary. As though the word just could shrink something down to nothing. As though calling something a boundary automatically made it reasonable. I lowered my hands slowly. I felt my fingers curl inward, felt the familiar shutdown begin, the composure sliding into place like a visor dropping over my face. I had been doing it for decades. I was very good at it. "Of course," I said, "I understand." I turned around and walked back through the house and out to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a full 4 minutes before starting the engine, not crying, not raging, just breathing with the very careful precision of someone who refuses to fall apart in someone else's driveway. Then I drove home. And on the drive home, something shifted in me, because here's what Renee didn't know. Here's what Daniel didn't know. That pastel yellow envelope didn't contain a check. It didn't contain cash. It contained a legal notice, a copy of a trust document I had spent 4 months drafting with my former colleague Patricia Voss, a trust and estate specialist in New Haven who had helped me structure something airtight, something generous, something designed specifically to protect Lily's future without giving Daniel or Renee any ability to redirect or control the funds. It was not a gift. It was a declaration. It said, "I see my granddaughter. I am thinking about her life decades from now. I am doing what I know how to do, which is plan." And they had snatched it away. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel, not from grief, from something much more electric than grief, from the beginning of a plan. I spent that first evening sitting in my study with the duplicate copy of the document spread across my desk. The room smells like old books and lemon polish, and it's the only place in my house where I feel completely like myself. I had a glass of red wine I didn't drink. I read the trust terms 3 times, then I sat back and closed my eyes and let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. They had called me manipulative. That was the word Renee used, manipulative, because I expressed love through financial security rather than tearful phone calls and spontaneous visits. Because I thought about Lily's future, her college, her first home, the years when she'd need a foundation under her feet and no one might be there to provide it. The pride rose up in me like heat. That's my other flaw, the pride. It doesn't announce itself the way anger does. It just quietly calcifies inside you until everything becomes about being right, about being seen correctly, about refusing to let a wrong assessment of your character stand unchallenged. I picked up the phone and called Patricia. "I need to make some amendments," I said when she answered. "Eliza," I could hear her pause. "It's 8:30 at night." "I know. I'm sorry, but they refused the document. They didn't even know what was in it. They just took it and I don't think they'll open it. I need to think about what happens if they don't." "What do you want to do?" "I want to change the trustee structure," I said, "and I want to add a guardianship clause." Another pause, longer this time. "That's a significant change. You'd be removing Daniel and Renee from any oversight role." "They already removed themselves," I said quietly. Patricia exhaled. "Eliza, are you sure you want to do this out of anger? Because if this goes sideways, you're not just protecting Lily, you're potentially creating a legal conflict that could affect your access to her." "I'm not doing it out of anger," I said, and I almost believed it. "I'm doing it because they have made it clear they don't want my involvement. I'm respecting that." "That's a very precise way to describe revenge," Patricia said. I didn't answer her right away. I just sat there in my study with the wine I wasn't drinking and the document spread across my desk, and I thought about how she wasn't wrong. She wasn't entirely wrong. There was something in me that wanted them to open that envelope and feel the full force of what they'd thrown away. Something that wanted to see their faces when they realized the scale of what they'd rejected. That was the pride talking, that was the flaw. "Just make the amendments," I said finally. Patricia sighed. "I'll have them ready by tomorrow afternoon." I spent the next 2 days in a state of careful, almost meditative preparation. I reviewed the amended trust document the moment Patricia sent it over, reading every clause with the attention I used to give contracts in my working years. The new structure named a third-party trustee, a professional fiduciary named Howard Bellamy, someone I had worked with on client matters years ago and trusted completely. The amended document removed Daniel and Renee from any oversight or advisory role. It established that the assets would transfer directly to Lily upon her 25th birthday, with provisions for educational expenses beginning at 18. There was an addendum, carefully worded, legally precise, that outlined the conditions under which the trust could be modified, and those conditions did not include Daniel or Renee's preferences or requests. There was a moment, the second evening, when I almost called Patricia back and told her to revert to the original. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating leftover soup, and I thought about Lily's face when she had run toward me at the party, the pure uncomplicated joy of a child who doesn't yet understand the architecture of family conflict, and something in me ached with the knowledge that what I was building might wall her off from me even as it protected her. "You're going too far," I whispered to myself. "You're letting the pride win." But then I remembered Renee's voice. We don't take gifts from people who manipulate with money, and I remembered Daniel staring at the grass, and the composure snapped back into place, cool and certain. I called Patricia back, not to revert, to add one more clause, a quiet one, a small one, almost invisible in the body of the document. A clause that said the fiduciary was instructed to send Lily an annual letter from me, every year on her birthday until she was old enough to decide for herself whether she wanted contact. Even if they cut me off completely, even if Renee spent the next decade poisoning the well, Lily would get a letter, from me, every year. That was the part that wasn't about revenge. That was the part that was purely about love. 3 days after the party, Daniel called. I was in the garden when my phone rang, deadheading the roses that grow along the back fence, a task that requires patience and a certain willingness to remove what's no longer vital. I saw his name on the screen and stood there for a moment with dirt on my gloves, deciding how to feel. Then I answered. "Mom," his voice was different from the voice he'd used at the party. Smaller somehow. We opened the card. "I see," I said. Renee thought maybe we overreacted. I pulled off one gardening glove and walked toward the porch. You told me you didn't take gifts from people who manipulate with money. I respected that. Mom, come on, you know it's more complicated than that. Do I? A silence. I could hear him breathing. There was paperwork inside. Yes. Legal paperwork. Yes. It's Mom, it's a trust document, a full trust for Lily. That's correct. He started again. This could pay for her entire education, her first home. This is Mom, why didn't you just tell us what it was? Something tightened in my chest. I tried to hand it to her. I said, wait, let me explain. I had 3 words out before Renee grabbed it. The silence on his end was the silence of a man who knew he had no good answer to that. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I hear that, but Mom, there's an addendum. Yes. It says it lists a third-party trustee, someone named Howard Bellamy. That's right. And it says our access is restricted, completely. We have no advisory role, no oversight, nothing. His voice was climbing now, the smallness giving way to something more defensive. Mom, we're her parents. How could you do that? You set a boundary, I said. I respected it. That is not what we meant, and you know it. Daniel, my voice stayed level. I had the perverse advantage of composure in this moment, which is both my gift and my weapon. What did you mean? We just wanted you to stop making everything about money. We wanted you to show up as a grandmother, not as an estate planner. And your wife told me in front of your daughter and her friends that you don't take gifts from people who manipulate with money. Not that you wanted something different, that you don't take gifts, so I won't give any. Mom, stop being a lawyer for 1 second. You're not in a deposition. This is your family. That landed. I won't pretend it didn't. I stood there on my back porch with one gardening glove on and one glove off and my roses behind me, and for a moment the composure wobbled, because he was right. I was being a lawyer. I was cross-examining my own son in the middle of a conversation that should have been about grief and hurt, and the fact that we had been missing each other for years, possibly decades, and neither of us knew how to close that distance. But the pride held. You can speak with Howard Bellamy if you have questions about the trust structure, I said. His contact information is at the top of the document. Mom, I love you, Daniel, and I meant it. That was the terrible part. I meant it completely. I'll talk to you soon. I hung up. I stood on the porch for a long time after that, not moving. A cardinal landed on the fence near the roses, bright red against the grey afternoon sky, and I watched it until it flew away. Then I went back to deadheading the roses, because the roses needed it, and because working with my hands was the only thing that kept me from calling him back and undoing everything I'd built. The next 2 weeks were quietly devastating. Daniel called 4 more times. Renee called once, a stiff, stilted conversation that lasted 6 minutes and ended with her saying, I just want you to know that we're not trying to keep Lily from you, which told me they were at least considering it. I kept my answers brief and my tone neutral. I did not apologize. I did not explain. I had explained. I had tried to hand them the explanation in a yellow envelope, and they had snatched it away. Patricia called me on a Thursday morning, 11 days after the party. I had an interesting call from a Connecticut family law attorney named Garrett Sims this morning, she said. I set down my coffee cup. Who does he represent? Daniel and Renee. The words settled over me like cold water. They hired an attorney. They did. He was asking questions about the trust, whether it's challengeable, whether the guardianship clause creates any custodial implications, whether you have grounds to request court-ordered visitation. Visitation, I repeated the word carefully. They're worried you're going to try to use the trust as leverage to force contact with Lily. Something in me went very still. This was the consequence I hadn't fully seen, the way my own maneuvering had made me look to them, exactly like what they'd accused me of being, controlling, manipulative, using money as leverage. And the truth was I had changed the trust in the heat of wounded pride, and even though my intentions weren't purely vindictive, the structure I'd built looked like exactly what they feared. What did you tell Sims? I asked. I told him the trust is irrevocable as currently structured, and that my client's intentions regarding contact are her own business, Patricia said. But Eliza, you need to decide what you actually want here, because right now you've created a legal document that protects Lily's financial future, but may have permanently positioned you as an adversary to her parents. And if they lawyer up in earnest, this gets expensive and ugly for everyone. Including Lily, I said. Especially Lily. I sat with that for a long time after I hung up, long enough that my coffee went cold, long enough for the light in the kitchen to shift from morning gold to flat afternoon grey. I thought about what Patricia had said to me the night I called her. That's a very precise way to describe revenge. I had brushed it off, but she had been right, and I had known it, and I had done it anyway. My granddaughter's 8th birthday party had humiliated me, and I had come home and restructured a major legal document while running on wounded pride and expensive red wine I hadn't even drunk. I thought about the annual letter clause, the one I had added not out of pride or strategy, but out of love. I thought about 8-year-old Lily in her lopsided pigtails, running toward me across a lawn, her whole face bright with uncomplicated happiness, not yet old enough to understand that the adults in her life were building walls out of their own unresolved failures and calling it protection. I picked up the phone and called Patricia back. "I want to modify the trust again," I said. A pause. "Eliza. I want to restore Daniel and Renee's advisory role, not control. They won't have control. Howard Bellamy retains that. But I want them to receive annual statements. I want them to know what's in the trust, how it's growing, what provisions apply when. They should know what exists for their daughter." That's a significant reversal from where you were 10 days ago. I know. What changed? I thought for a moment about how to answer honestly. I did what they accused me of, I said finally. I used the trust as a weapon, not as a gift, and I'm not willing to be what they accused me of being. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's actually quite mature of you, Eliza." "Don't congratulate me yet," I said. "The addendum stays. Howard Bellamy stays. The annual letters to Lily stay. I'm not removing my protections or my ability to communicate with my granddaughter directly when she's older. I'm choosing not to make her parents into enemies if I can help it." "Understood," Patricia said. "I'll have revised documents by Monday." I called Daniel that same evening. He answered on the second ring, which told me he'd been waiting. "Mom," he said immediately, wary. "I spoke with my attorney today," I said. "Okay," his voice was guarded. "I'm restoring your advisory role in the trust. You and Renee will receive annual statements. You'll be informed about every provision, every distribution, every change. Howard Bellamy will remain as trustee because I believe professional oversight protects Lily better than family involvement in these matters. That's not a judgment of you, it's just how I believe these structures should work, but you will not be excluded from knowing." Silence, a long one. "Why?" he said finally. "Because you were partially right," I said, "and the words cost me something, cost the pride something. I changed the trust while I was hurt and angry. That wasn't fair to you, it wasn't fair to Lily." "Mom," his voice cracked on the word just slightly. I didn't know what was in the envelope. "I know. If I had known." "Daniel," I stopped him gently. "I know, and I should have called ahead. I should have told you I was bringing something important and asked for a few minutes of privacy with you before the party so I could explain it. I didn't. I just showed up with it, and I can see how that looked." "Why didn't you tell us?" I had to think about that, honestly think about it without the composure as a shield. "Because I was afraid you'd talk me out of it," I said finally. "Or Renee would, and I wanted Lily to have this. I didn't want it to get caught in whatever this is between us." A very long silence. "There's a lot between us," he said. "I know," I said. "I know there is, and I think most of it is my fault, Daniel. The way I've loved you has always been, it's been through planning and providing, not through saying the things I should have said, not through being present in the ways that mattered to you. I know that." I heard him exhale, a long, shaky sound. "Renee thinks you don't like her," he said. "Renee is wrong," I said, "but I understand why she thinks it. I've never found a way to." I started again. "I don't know how to be easy with people. I never have. It's a flaw, I'm aware of it." "She's not wrong about the card thing," he said quietly. "She grabbed it because last Christmas you put a check in Lily's card that was made out to Lily's college fund that we don't have access to, and you didn't tell us about the account. And we found out because Lily's teacher asked why Lily was telling classmates her grandma owned her college. It made Renee feel undermined," I said. "Yes." I closed my eyes briefly. I had genuinely not thought about how that had landed. I had been so focused on the act of provision that I had completely failed to consider the experience of the people living inside the provision. My generosity had felt to them like a reminder that I didn't trust them to raise their own daughter adequately without my financial supervision. "I understand," I said. "I'm not apologizing for the trust. I believe it's the right thing for Lily's future, but I should have talked to you about it first, both of you together." Yeah, Daniel said. Yeah, you should have. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that isn't empty, but is full of all the things two people who love each other have spent years not saying. Can I take Lily for ice cream Saturday? I asked finally. He was quiet for a second. Let me ask Renee. Of course. Mom. Yes. The thing in the trust, the annual letters, the ones that go to Lily every birthday. His voice was careful, like he was approaching something fragile. I read that part 3 times. That was you, wasn't it? Not the lawyer. Yes, I said quietly, that was me. Another silence, softer this time. She's going to love those, he said. I had to put my hand over my mouth for a moment. I had to look at the ceiling and breathe very deliberately. I hope so, I said when I could. Saturday's fine, he said. Ice cream, 3 o'clock, you can pick her up. Thank you, Daniel. Yes, he said, and then quietly, thanks, Mom. I sat in my study for a long time after that call. The room was dark except for the desk lamp, and the lemon polish smell was faint but there, grounding me in the familiar. I thought about Patricia's question, are you sure you want to do this out of anger? And about the fact that I had done it out of anger, at least partly, and about how the pride had almost cost me the thing I cared about more than any legal document in any folder on my desk. The trust remained, Howard Bellamy remained, the annual letters remained, but Daniel and Renee would now receive their statements, and the document had been restructured to look less like a weapon and more like what it had always been meant to be, a gift. Imperfectly given by an imperfect woman who has never fully learned to say in words what she can apparently only say in careful legal clauses and pastel yellow envelopes. I picked Lily up on Saturday at 3 o'clock exactly. She came running out the front door in her yellow jacket, still her favorite color, and climbed into the back seat of my car with all the chaotic energy of a person who has not yet learned to contain herself, which is to say with exactly the energy I have been trying to learn from for 67 years. Grandma Eliza, she said, buckling her seatbelt with great seriousness, did you know that you can get a sundae with gummy bears on top? I did not know that, I said. Well, you can, I've been thinking about it for 2 days. Then we'd better not waste any more time, I said. She laughed, and the sound of it filled the car, and the tightness in my chest, that familiar resident, my old companion, loosened just a little. Not completely, probably never completely, but enough. Here is what I know now on the other side of all of it. The trust is real, and Lily's future is protected, and I did the right thing in creating it even if my methods were imperfect. The pride led me somewhere damaging. It led me to restructure a legal document like a closing argument, to treat my son's phone call like a deposition, to let the composure function as armor when what the moment needed was just an ordinary human conversation about hurt feelings. I regret those parts. I don't regret the trust, or the letters, or showing up with that yellow envelope. Renee called me 2 weeks after the Saturday ice cream trip. It was a longer call, 17 minutes, which is about 15 more than I expected. She told me that she knew she had overreacted at the party. She told me she had felt for years that I was communicating to her that she wasn't enough, not organized enough, not financially responsible enough, not adequate to raise my son's daughter without my intervention. She wasn't wrong that I had communicated that. I hadn't meant to, I want to believe I hadn't meant to, but intent and impact are 2 different legal standards, and the impact was clear. I don't want Lily to grow up without her grandmother, Renee said. Even if her grandmother and I are, she paused, searching for the word. Complicated, I offered. A small, surprised laugh. Yeah, complicated. I think that's honest, I said. I think it is too, she said. It isn't a perfect resolution. I want to be honest about that. Daniel and Renee and I are not suddenly warm and easy with each other. I still plan where they feel things. I still speak in precision where they want softness. That gap is real, and it was not created by one birthday party and cannot be healed by one restructured trust. But Lily got her gummy bear sundae, and I sat across from her in a red vinyl booth and listened to her tell me about her class hamster and the unfairness of her school's no running in the hallways policy and the specific qualities that make one friendship bracelet superior to another, and I let myself just be present in it, not planning it, not documenting it, not making it into something she'd benefit from later. Just there. Just watching her talk with her hands the way her father does, the way I probably do, this little relay of gestures passing through generations. And every birthday, for as long as I'm alive to write them, she will get a letter. From me, in a pastel yellow envelope, telling her who she was at 8, at 9, at 10, telling her that someone was watching and remembering and caring in the careful, clumsy, imperfect way I know how to care. That is my revenge, I suppose, if you want to call it that. Not the amended trust, not the third-party trustee, not the legal architecture I built in wounded pride one evening in my study. The real revenge is this: I am still here, still showing up, still finding ways to say what I mean even when the words fail me, still learning, at 67, how to be a grandmother instead of an estate attorney. It is the slowest, most stubborn form of love I know, and I am very, very stubborn. So I suppose Lily is in good hands after all.